It's been 7 years since our last Star Wars film in theaters, and I'm just not quite sure that this is the way.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We love talking about movies and more. I'm your host, Mason Phillips, and today I have kind of a review for The Mandalorian and Grogu, the new Star Wars movie that just came out in theaters. This is really going to be more like a discussion. Yeah, I'm going to talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, but it's not really going to be a full review, more of an analysis of the movie, my take on it, what I enjoyed from the movie, and what I think didn't quite measure up. We'll get into this discussion, but before we do, I want to ask you guys to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified when new videos go live to this channel. When you guys do that, it always helps me out, and I greatly appreciate it. So, The Mandalorian and Grogu, the first Star Wars movie in 7 years. 2019 was the last time we had a Star Wars movie in theaters. It was The Rise of Skywalker. I have my feelings on that movie.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
But I was hoping that we would have a grand return next time Star Wars hits theaters. Maybe we'll have something that we can all get really excited about. And I won't lie, there are some people who are enjoying the film. I can't take that away from what this movie is doing. It's largely people who aren't super hardcore into the Star Wars universe. Really just anybody who was looking for a fun film. But I'm really deeply connected into this universe, and it didn't quite land for me. There's a lot of things it did as a film that I think it didn't get right, but there's a lot of things it did as a Star Wars film that really it didn't get right. But I can't take away from this movie what it's doing for people in general. It has been mildly well received. For the most part, the critics and audiences kind of seem to be on the same page overall. I think the audiences are enjoying this movie a little bit more than the critics are. I think for your average film fan, at least, they're enjoying the movie. It's nothing that's going to get anybody super excited. It's definitely not going to crush it at the box office. It's not doing too well overall, but I can't deny that some people are enjoying this. I just don't really happen to be one of them. Now, did I like it more than The Rise of Skywalker? Yeah, that's not hard to do. Did I like it more than The Last Jedi? Yes, that's also not hard to do. But I think where this movie's really lacking was that fun factor that a lot of people are talking about. I keep hearing this online, this rhetoric online that this is a fun film, regardless of lore or whatever you want out of the Star Wars universe. This movie is just a fun romp, and I gotta admit, I didn't have a lot of fun with this movie. I had fun moments. There were moments in this movie that I thought were fun. I thought the first 10 or so minutes of the movie when Mando is going up against these Imperial remnants, this Imperial warlord that he's been sent by the New Republic to hunt down and capture, that part of the movie was very fun. And that's what I was hoping the rest of the movie was going to be. Unfortunately, it doesn't stick the landing. It doesn't stay there. It veers off on so many different side quests, and that's what I enjoyed to an extent about the Mandalorian show, but this is a movie. This is different. We can't treat this like just a bigger version of a TV show. This is Star Wars back in theaters, and we're missing that grand adventure, that grand experiment, and that wonderful epicness that Star Wars is supposed to come with, and I will even say the sequel trilogy largely had that. I have a lot of problems with the sequel trilogy, but they did have a more epic feel to them than what The Mandalorian and Grogu had. There's just a lot of this movie that kind of falls flat, doesn't quite hit the epic notes that a Star Wars film is supposed to hit. Even a film like Solo, A Star Wars Story, that it can be seen as this basic adventure, but there is a more epic feeling to that movie than there was to this movie. And I think a lot of what this movie is lacking in is the music. I love Ludwig Göransson's score of the Mandalorian TV show. It was really great what he composed there for Din Djarin and Grogu and all of those characters, but it's missing in this movie. And the element that's missing from his score is John Williams. There's no John Williams essence in the score that he did for The Mandalorian and Grogu. The music was terrible. I'm sorry, Ludwig Göransson. You're a great composer. I can't wait to hear what you've composed for The Odyssey with Christopher Nolan. You did a great job with Oppenheimer. Anytime you team up with Ryan Coogler is always a wonderful experience, but this just didn't work. I don't know if he was even there the whole time for the composition, or if he just kind of pushed this off on somebody else to take over and kind of do in his name. He's just not plugged in with this film. There's so many things that, for one, it doesn't feel orchestral. That's another thing that was missing with this movie in the music, is there's these like techno beats that hit, and so over your head, so jarring and so out of place. Doesn't sound like anything Star Wars at all. It sounds like in-universe Star Wars. Like this is maybe what these people, the citizens of Star Wars, are listening to. And at first, when it first pops up and you first hear it, it does kind of bleed into music you're hearing in a bar or on the street. And that was okay. I was willing to give that moment a pass, but it keeps coming back. And in moments that it shouldn't be there. And it also goes against what George Lucas originally wanted with Star Wars, was not to have that techno, not to have that disco sound. When Star Wars was originally coming out in the 70s and the 80s, that's what Lucas was trying to avoid. He wanted to give Star Wars a more grand, epic scale, epic feel, and that is why he went to John Williams to compose a grand orchestral piece for Star Wars. So when you get this techno whatever, it just kind of hits you over the head, really pulled me out of Star Wars. I could have actually forgiven a lot of what this movie was missing because of the music. The music could have kind of overlaid the film, maybe glued the film together a little bit more, put this nice blanket over the stuff that isn't so pretty. But the music, unfortunately, it didn't work in this film. And so I got to give it a knock for that. That's where John Williams was really able to save some moments in the sequel trilogy that really didn't work. But because you had the John Williams music overlaid, it felt epic. So in the moment when you're first watching those scenes, you're kind of tricked into thinking, oh, this is really, really great. Upon rewatching and re-examining those moments, maybe they don't work quite as well, but the music was always outstanding in the sequel trilogy. Regardless of what you think of those films, the music was outstanding because of John Williams. And then we're missing that component here in The Mandalorian and Grogu. So I don't really want to see Ludwig Göransson continue in the Star Wars universe. I'd like him to kind of move on and do some other things that I know he's better suited for. And then another thing that really killed this film was the pacing. The pacing of this movie just dragged, and you could definitely tell. I've heard this rhetoric, I heard it going into this movie before I saw it, that it felt like episodes of the Mandalorian TV show just stitched together. Yes, it definitely feels stitched together. It feels like we finished this mission, now we're going into the next mission. We'll finish that mission, then we'll go to the next thing. There's no true through line through this entire movie. I don't really know what the meaning of this film would be. There's a lot of different things you could take from this. Maybe it was that Mando has to realize at one point Grogu's going to have to live without him. There's going to be that essence of passing the torch or whatever. And I think they tried to do that, but you knew that Mando wasn't going to die. They've also introduced this element of force healing in Star Wars that kind of cheapens anybody's death in this galaxy. So as long as you're next to somebody who can wield the force, I'm sorry, I guess Qui-Gon Jinn wasn't told this in The Phantom Menace, so he didn't have a lot of great luck there. But all these other characters, ever since The Rise of Skywalker, now you're giving this to Grogu too, it cheapens these moments because you know, oh, they'll just use force healing and they'll heal this character. If they have something lethal happen to them, they'll heal this character. And they've not just done that, they've also in past Star Wars properties cheapened what a lightsaber can do. Doesn't quite act as lethally as it used to. It's not as lethal as it used to be. And so it's just like getting poked with a stick, just a little too hard, but you can recover from that. It's stuff like this that really irritates me. It takes away the stakes, takes away the tension of the scenes. At the end of the day, this is all just gonna pass. It'll be fine and they'll forget it ever happened. It's stuff like that that just really bothered me with this movie. The Act 1, Act 2, I don't know what Act 1 or Act 2 or Act 3 was. It has a structure problem. It has a pacing problem. There's stuff that happens like the moments when it's just Grogu and Mando. There's a part in the movie, I won't spoil anything, but there's a part in the movie where Grogu and Mando are on their own, and Grogu kind of has to fend for himself for a little bit. That whole part, I got so bored. I got so bored in the theater. Disney's clearly relying on Grogu's cuteness to get by. They're not giving him anything to attach or latch onto. Nothing meaty to take. There wasn't a moment there where I felt any kind of intensity. They didn't take the lesson from George Lucas, faster and more intense. They didn't tell Grogu to do that. They didn't tell Mando, they didn't tell Pedro Pascal, use that faster, more intensity. There wasn't intensity here, and you're missing that in these moments with Mando and Grogu, and especially when Mando's gone back to having his helmet on the whole time. I think that's important for the character, but when it's these two characters by themselves, now we're relying on the emotion of a puppet to convey what the story is saying, and a character that also doesn't talk. So there's a bit of a challenge here trying to get the audience to connect with the scene in this moment, and I think that's a moment where it would have have been nice to have the helmet removed for a time. It's just these two characters together, so I don't think that really creates an issue for Mando having his helmet on, keeping his face covered. It's still the Mandalorian way, especially because Grogu is also a Mandalorian, so I think you could get by there. But there's no emotion felt in this moment. Again, another issue that this movie has, it's just a bit of a drag in these moments between the two, where I didn't feel the movie moving anywhere. It felt like we were stuck, and I was getting quite bored in the theater in these moments of the film. Now I want to go back to something regarding the music once again. I get what they were trying to do back when Rogue One came out. They decided not to use a Star Wars opening crawl, to make it feel different, keep it separate from the main films, but I think that was a huge mistake. Now, I give that movie a bit of a pass. I do love Rogue One overall, so I'll give that a pass. But they keep doing it with these non-episode films. They did it with Solo. They kind of put a text over the screen explaining where we were in the galaxy, but that opening crawl, again, was missing. But I give it a pass. The music in that film, like Rogue One, did feel very Star Wars, felt very John Williams. And at the end of the film with the credits, you still get the classic Star Wars fanfare. This movie does something so egregious. Yes, we're missing the opening crawl, so I'm asking for that. We need that with a Star Wars movie, whether it's episode 10, 11, or 12, or just any Star Wars movie we get in the future. I'm hoping, they may not be planning this right now, but I'm hoping with Starfighter next year, they just make that change and decide, okay, we're reintroducing the Star Wars opening crawl. We need that epic fanfare to tell us, okay, we're entering a Star Wars movie, let's get ready, buckle your seatbelts, we're ready for an epic adventure. We're missing that with The Mandalorian and Grogu. Not only that, they did another classic Star Wars sin in that we broke the rules of putting the opening credits. There's opening credits on a Star Wars movie. There's never been opening credits on a Star Wars movie because it kind of takes you out. You're not just escaping to another world, you're now visibly watching a movie. You know you're watching a movie. Star Wars is supposed to be kind of separate from all of that, and you see starring Pedro Pascal and starring Sigourney Weaver, directed by Jon Favreau. I don't want to see that at the opening of the movie. Really took me out of it. George Lucas also intentionally did not do that with his Star Wars movies, and this just really irritated me. I don't know why they did this, again, feeling like an extension of a TV show. And so they did that, and then at the end credits, rather than going to the Star Wars fanfare, we go to the Mandalorian and Grogu fanfare. And while I do think it was a little clever when we got that first title page, it says The Mandalorian, and then it goes, and Grogu. I did kind of smile because it did feel like the opening of an episode of The Mandalorian, but again, we're not doing an episode of The Mandalorian, we're doing a movie, a new Star Wars movie. So it's stuff like this that just drove me crazy, irritated me, and I was really pulled out of the experience. Do I have anything nice to say about this movie? Yes, I do. I did enjoy that opening 20 minutes or so of this movie, or opening 10 minutes. Anyway, it's when the Mandalorian is going after that Imperial warlord. He did feel very menacing, very threatening, and it felt like the early couple episodes of The Mandalorian in those moments. Bringing Nal Hutta from the Clone Wars to life was really cool. Seeing that in live action was pretty epic. The different monsters they brought, I think they did too many, but they were interesting, they were unique. I think the CG, all the effects were top notch. This is Star Wars, so they at least got that right. Love seeing Zeb from Rebels in this as well. Steve Blum coming back to voice the character was a very nice touch. Not just a cameo, but he actually does have an important role in this movie. Rod of the Hutt, played by Jeremy Allen White, him talking in basic or English for us, it didn't draw me out of the movie. I actually like that they made that change, because if this is a character that we're sticking with through the entire film, at the beginning he does speak in Huttese, but he changes it, and it didn't bother me because it's a way for us to get the emotion out of this character, understand where he's coming from. If he's talking in a completely different language, Grogu's not speaking, the Mandalorian barely speaks, so it really creates an issue if you had too many characters that aren't being very vocal, and with CG characters sometimes it's hard to convey emotion through that as well, so that could be a bit of an issue. So that did not pull me out of it. I heard he was using this very thick New York accent. I think he's just talking like Jeremy Allen White. Didn't really bother me, so that I actually appreciated that they made that change with the character. A character that I never expected to come back from the Clone Wars, so that's a very interesting choice there, but a character that I thought was used very effectively. Rada didn't bother me, and so I thought he was actually a welcome addition to the story. Embo, the bounty hunter that's used in the movie that has that Captain America shield hat, that was really cool. He's also from the Clone Wars, if you didn't know that. A really cool bounty hunter character from the Clone Wars, a character that doesn't speak, and I was expecting to see some subtitles, so that didn't really bother me too much because it's not a character that ever really relied on vocals. That's an exception I'll make to that rule I kind of established earlier. His character worked for me. I thought he was really cool, very menacing, and when he first comes up to the Mandalorian's house in the movie, I'm trying not to give away too many major spoilers here, but when he does approach Mando's home, I thought that was one of the few actually tense moments of the movie where I was really engaged with the film. So that was a really cool moment as well. The droid Gatra was an interesting inclusion to this film. It's something from Star Wars lore. It's been there before, and I like seeing these repurposed battle droids from the Clone Wars used as a security force for the Hutts. So that was really cool and a unique use of these characters, of these droids. Those are the few things I can say that were good. Sigourney Weaver was in this movie, and she was totally wasted. Anything that she did in this movie could have easily been given to an actor of a lesser caliber. Not saying of an actor that acts worse than her, but just maybe an unknown actor could have easily had this role. She was just put in this movie to prop the movie up and give it a little bit of star power, and Star Wars doesn't need star power. It's never needed that. That's not how it originally started. You'd have one or two maybe, like an Alec Guinness or a Peter Cushing, but lately with Disney Star Wars, they've really relied on this star power. I mean, Starfighter next year, we're getting Ryan Gosling as the lead of this. I'm not saying he's a bad actor, but that could pull you out of the movie. Now, I just recently saw Project Hail Mary. He completely disappears into the role, so I'm not worried that I'm just going to be thinking that's Ryan Gosling, that's Ryan Gosling, that's Ryan Gosling. If he's directed well, and I know he will be, it's Sean Levy, so I'm not really worried too much about that. I don't think he's going to pull me out of the movie. Amy Adams is also supposed to be in the movie. I don't think that's going to pull me out of the movie, but it's an interesting decision that they've made that I don't think Star Wars needs necessarily. It's certainly not helping them at the box office. So using these high-profile stars, yeah, if they want to play these characters, if they're interested in playing these characters, and they do a great job at the end of the day, I'm not going to complain about that, but it's just an interesting choice. It's not quite what Star Wars has done. Even the sequel trilogy, when it was starting, was searching for unknowns, and that was one of the stronger aspects of the production of those films. I think the choices made here with this movie are just a little curious, and this is a Jon Favreau directed piece. I expected a lot more from this movie, and unfortunately just didn't get much out of it. I'm really worried and hoping that this is a leftover piece from the old Kathleen Kennedy era. I will give Kathleen Kennedy her props. She's a great producer. She has not been a great president or a great shepherd at all for Star Wars. She's made a lot of decisions that I have definitely not agreed with. Is she a great producer? Yes. She's produced some of my favorite films like Back to the Future and Jurassic Park, among others. Indiana Jones. She's a great producer. Not a great film head, not a great studio president. So I'm hoping that whatever we got out of this movie was kind of just a leftover piece of whatever she had her influence on. Starfighter could still have that because that also came kind of in that point of her being the president of Lucasfilm. But I'm also a little concerned about what Dave Filoni might be bringing to Star Wars and what his direction of Star Wars might be. I was initially very excited for his takeover of Lucasfilm. Right now I'm kind of in a wait and see. He did something great with Maul, but I wasn't so thrilled with The Mandalorian and Grogu. So, and this was a movie that was partially written by him, uses characters from the Clone Wars that were created by Dave Filoni. I'm just kind of in a wait and see. So The Mandalorian and Grogu, no, this was not the way for future Star Wars, and while I have been critical of this movie, I will say I hope it succeeds at the box office, because if Star Wars succeeds, we all succeed. Hopefully they'll learn their lessons from what they did. The fan feedback, I know us as Star Wars fans tend to not be heard too well by Lucasfilm and the powers that be. We kind of tend to be ignored. Occasionally we are heard. Hopefully our voices are loud enough, respectful enough, so they will listen to us. If anybody comes at Lucasfilm in a kind of a bullying manner or an egregious manner, that's just going to be noise to them. We got to be respectful, but we can still voice when we don't quite like a certain direction or a certain take on a Star Wars property. That's all well and good. That's fine. But The Mandalorian and Grogu didn't quite work for me. I don't think it was as bad as everybody was saying it was, but there's definitely a few things in here that I just didn't connect with. This has been oddly my first review or discussion or analysis of a Star Wars movie on this channel. Thought I'd do this way sooner because Star Wars is so important to me. As a kid, that's what got me into movies, was Star Wars, was Back to the Future. Those are the two franchises that really got me interested in filmmaking and watching movies and TV, getting immersed in these wonderful worlds that I know Star Wars can be, and I believe can be again. So I have faith in this universe. I haven't been quite excited for everything they've put out lately, especially in the Disney era. It's been pretty rough for me over here, and many Star Wars fans as well. But I do think there's still hope. Dave Filoni, you might be our only hope we'll see where we go from here. So, The Mandalorian and Grogu, no, I don't think this was the way, but I think there might be a bright spot for Star Wars somewhere in the near future, hopefully in the very near future. If you like this video, go down in the comment section and let me know what you thought of this video. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think of The Mandalorian and Grogu? Have you had a chance to see the movie? Go down in the comment section and let me know your thoughts. If you like video games, playing Star Wars video games, just gaming in general, I have a gaming channel now called MP Games and More. So if you like gaming, you want to hear me talk about video games in the future, maybe play some games on the channel as well, I'd love for you to join me over there on MP Games and More. I'd appreciate the support, and I appreciate you supporting this channel as well. Before you go, remember to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified when new videos go live to this channel. When you do that, it always helps me out, and I greatly appreciate it. Hope you all have an awesome and a fantastic day. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next video.